I realized that our kids are on track to experience fewer sunsets than us for the first time in U.S. history.
Wake up call.
It's not a myth that big tobacco bought up big food companies and then rolled out their big tobacco playbook to addict kids to ultra-processed foods.
I think we all know what to do, but I think what's a bigger challenge in America is how. Nora LaTore, you have kind of figured out a major piece of the puzzle. What is the biggest food service in America?
So I think most people think of Arches. They think the largest restaurant chain in America is McDonald's. It's actually Subway in unit locations. You start seeing Subways everywhere. But there's one restaurant chain that's bigger than Subway, Starbucks, and McDonald's combined. And that is our U.S. public school food system. So public schools are the biggest restaurant chain in America, and they're feeding the most important people, our kids. And the opportunity we think at Eat Real is that schools can be the best restaurant in every town and help really deliver health, happiness, and academic success to our kids.
For people who don't have children or follow food policy, why should they care about what our school cafeterias serve?
Yeah, the reality in our food system today is that 67% of kids' calories in schools, out of schools, at home, throughout their day, 67% of kids' calories are ultra-processed calories. So that's really concerning because we're seeing ultra-processed food-related diseases then showing up in kids that used to show up in adulthood. And that impacts our whole society. And, we talk about just in terms of costs, not even in terms of life impact, but if you just look at costs, we spend trillions of dollars, over $3 trillion a year in America, over almost 16% of our GDP on preventable ultra-processed food-related diseases, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, et cetera. And so at Eat Real, we believe that we can stop disease before it starts and prevent those expensive costs to our healthcare system, to our society. And that if we can get kids real food at school where they get over 50% of their calories, then we can help create health and help kids have healthier, longer, happier lives.
So let's talk about Eat Real. This is your organization, and I know Robert Lustig is on your board of advisors. I think one of the founders. He's also on this podcast. But what is the mission of Eat Real?
We are 100% focused on helping kids have access to delicious, healthy, local, plant-powered, regenerative, more organic, more vibrant food so that they can learn, grow, and thrive. And we do that by helping schools upgrade their food systems with our K-12 certification. We also work on awareness building, and then we do systemic policy change and advocacy.
For a listener who maybe hasn't been in a public school cafeteria in a few years or decades, can you describe the state of the average school lunch?
So there is real food transformation happening around our country quickly, but the reality still is that the school food system, the budgets are really tight. They're aren't kitchens. They were taken out in a lot of the schools. The infrastructure is really old. It's a really hard job. It's a fast job. Kids have 18 minutes, 20 minutes to eat sometimes. You're feeding thousands and tens of thousands of students. Some schools are 300,000 student districts. So you're feeding a lot of kids in a short amount of time. It's a really hard job. It's a really fast-moving restaurant, and it's a big responsibility. There's not big reimbursement rates, aren't catching up with food inflation, et cetera. So it's really complicated, and it's resulting in a lot of the food nationally still needs an upgrade. And so it's if people remember back to when they had school food, or I grew up in school food, probably like you in Minnesota, it hasn't changed as much as we would hope. But we're seeing that real change is happening really fast with Eat Real and with our program in schools. Schools can go from just getting into our program, fast forward less than 2 years, and start to make major shifts towards more local, re-regionalizing the food system around the schools, adding in delicious plant-powered options. One of our schools just reduced sugar. They reduced 34 pounds of sugar per student per year.
Jesus.
It's making delicious swaps.
It's a wheelbarrow of sugar.
Yeah.
I remember in the 1980s under the Reagan administration, the school lunch programs, the budgets were cut. And as a result, a lot of schools basically took out all of the actual appliances that they used to cook from scratch, and they largely installed warmers.
Mhm.
and they'd buy this pre-prepared food from like Sodexo or Schwann's, Minnesota company, which tended to be things like Hot Pockets and chicken nuggets and pizzas, things you just rip off and warm. So a lot of these lunch cooks don't even cook anymore.
Yeah, they call it heat and serve.
Can you describe in terms of ultra-processed foods or meat or too much meat or cheese? I mean, what do school lunches look like now?
So if we talk about 67% of kids' calories are ultra-processed calories and packaged in a school food environment, it will be like a pizza in a plastic bag, which then comes with a side of microplastics and obesogens. And then when you look at the ingredient list, which I just was having school lunch in a school that wasn't Eat Real certified yet, and the ingredients list was very, very long, tons of preservatives. In my head, I thought, wow, this pizza could make it to Mars and back. Like this is just like, what?
And still be inedible.
Yeah. And so it's just, and schools are up against a lot. And so that's why we think this is the moment to bet on our schools and bet on school food heroes who want to make change and who know it's possible. And we see it. And they can go from that plastic bag pizza. Our schools, I just had a sourdough focaccia with a kale crumble. Like it was the best pizza I have had ever. Yeah. So it is possible. Or they're just serving an incredible scratch made dough or a dough from a local bread company with whole grain in it. That then, there's also, we can still have our pizza. We can make a better pizza and it's actually fresher, more delicious. The kids love it. They have a sense of pride. So do the lunch ladies and the staff. And it's possible to just make simple upgrades.
What role does the USDA play in school lunches?
So the USDA actually is in charge of school food standards. They run huge farm-to-school grant programs that actually help schools get grants, and nonprofits like ours get grants to help schools buy more local, buy fresh from farms, et cetera. And so they play a massive role in helping re-regionalize the food system and helping kids have access to local American-grown fruits and vegetables, specialty crops.
The Farm Bill it mostly subsidizes soybeans, corn, wheat. These are feedlot inputs for dairy cows and for low-quality meat. Sugar beets. So isn't there some pressure since the USDA funds it that for the schools to carry products that are the result of these commodity grains?
Yeah, because of how those subsidies work and the Farm Bill works today, those crops are subsidized to be grown and with crop insurance. And then also they're subsidized through the school lunch program. There's actually a school foods commodities list that then schools can kind of buy from a menu or a catalog, if you will. It looks like a catalog.
And what's in that catalog?
It's like, these are commodity beef or, just what you're talking about. Commodity proteins,
commodity
huge
cheese.
Mass scale products that, we could move towards more real products. We could,
isn't there certain economic pressure to buy those foods right now for schools?
Right. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And they're given commodity dollars. So they're actually given extra dollars, to buy from this commodities catalog. So there's a lot of really cool levers that we could pull, whether that's thinking about how do we long-term create a groundswell of passion for innovating our Farm Bill, update that commodities list, or allow for grants so that schools can use those commodity dollars for local food. So there's a big push for that, or allowing for, instead of me using that $300,000 for my school to buy from this commodity catalog from big names, how do I buy from Farmer Jane down the street?
But that would require a change in the Farm Bill?
That would be in our commodities list, and there could also, the USDA could issue an exemption or create a process for approval.
So one of the legs of your stool over at Eat Real is this sort of policy work that sets the framework so it's easier. First of all, what are the levers, most important policy levers that are going to make the biggest difference in a better school lunch? And where have you guys been successful?
So we helped pass the first sugar standard, first in California, that then the USDA added a sugar standard in.
So you were part of a consortium or something?
Yep, we worked with a coalition on that. And Dr. Lustig helped really
congratulations on that.
Thank you. It was a big deal. It never been done. And we worked with Senator Skinner in California, and she's like, this has never been done. I was like, no, let's do it. And so we did it. And she was a determined grandmother and made it happen, and then coordinated nationally. Historically, there was never a sugar standard in kids' food in America. at eReal, working with Dr. Lustig, we helped pass the first sugar bill. So there's now starting to be a sugar standard in school. It's just starting.
Oh, and what would that be?
But it's limiting sugar to 10% of daily calories.
It's still a lot.
It's still a lot. And globally, they really think it should be more like 5%. But I think it'll take some time for us to get there, and we need to make investments. But there's been one analysis where we found that just in school breakfast alone, kids could get 4 times the amount of sugar they should have the entire day. So, kids today in America just drink a bathtub of added sugar a year. Just drink. I want to do a calc of okay, if they drink a bathtub, how much do they eat and drink? But we're spiking our kids with sugar, and we don't want them to have school breakfast with a side of diabetes or prediabetes. So that's it's really important that sugar is one of the biggest things that with some simple swaps, we can make big upgrades. And we're inundating our kids with sugar, and it's really impacting their health in a major way.
One of the things that bothers me the most is chocolate milk. Chocolate milk usually has more sugar ounce for ounce than a Coke does. And it's sort of merchandised as this, healthy alternative. And it also has saturated fat and, dairy for a lot of people, especially kids growing up, promotes acne. And somehow we're deluded into thinking, well, that's healthy. You don't see that in Japan, for example.
Well, I think parents at home also don't feed their kids chocolate milk every day or expect that it's being served at home every day. It's more expensive. We see our kids flying off the walls after they have it. It's not something that, that we necessarily think can help our kids focus and learn and grow, or helps really them have tons of success in the classroom. And so I think it's not that it has to be a never food. It's just, how does it be a sometimes food or a treat?
Treats are fine.
So that's where we think that it's about giving our kids delicious options and healthy options, and giving them the education that, chocolate milk is a treat. And then we helped pass the first food dye bill with Assemblymember Gabriel in California, who's incredible. So we partnered with other nonprofits. We passed the first food dye bill here in California, but then worked on it in West Virginia and a bunch of other states. And then they started to pass it at the FDA last year. And then we most recently, within 6 months it was May and then into the fall, we worked with Assemblymember Gabriel again, who I think is a big hero. And he introduced the first bill to define what are harmful ultra-processed foods in schools, and then prevent Big Food from selling those worst of the worst items into schools.
What are the worst of the worst?
Those are the high fat, high sugar, high salt and then also that have, known harmful ingredients,
But what would that look like on the plate?
These are the very packaged pizza that might make it to Mars again, that has a very long list of
a burger that lasts a year.
Yeah, that you don't even you can't recognize most of those ingredients, and it has ingredients that in other countries or in Europe or around the world where they've not allowed them into their food system, or in Canada, et cetera. Ingredients that have been known to cause cancer, that have been known carcinogens, that are known to be toxic.
Yeah,
just don't allow them, especially not where our kids are learning or not where the government is helping provide food to our kids.
So give me an example of maybe a school breakfast and a school lunch you would like to improve. What does it look like now?
Yeah.
And what is feasibly possible for most schools in America?
Yeah, I'll give a couple school breakfast examples of kind of the before and the after. So in a kind of traditional school breakfast, you'll have a very sugary, red-looking, strawberry-like yogurt. So high in sugar, probably aren't any berries in that, in a plastic container. And then you'll have, and there'll be tons of sugar. And then you'll put a granola that also has tons of sugar. Probably not organic, probably not local, probably from a major food supplier, and that will be on the plate. And then maybe there are some French toast sticks that are not whole grain forward and
dipped in corn syrup.
Corn syrup. Yeah, maple. And then there's also usually options like a muffin, which one of my favorite comedians, Jim Gaffigan, just calls it a bald cupcake.
Yeah,
it's just
let's just call it what it is. It's cake.
Yeah, it's just cake for breakfast. So then you'll have a muffin that's cake, and so you have a refined carbohydrate smothered in sugar. So then that's where then kids can get just spiked with sugar from at the beginning of their day.
Their blood sugar spikes, their insulin spikes for about an hour. They're hyperactive. They don't learn very well in that state. And then it plummets.
Yeah.
So hour 2, they want to take a nap, and they're not very good learners at that time, are they?
Yeah, and I followed a teacher recently. I just had school breakfast, and I said, what's the biggest difference between that school breakfast and now they're getting more?
Now they eat real.
Yeah, now they're getting more protein. They're getting those egg bites that are also trendy right now, but low sugar egg bites with lots of vegetables in them, or a breakfast burrito, which is just a savory option, maybe with one of your favorites, some beans.
There we go.
And so
Now you're
bean breakfast
cooking with
burrito, yeah, with like local cheese, real cheese, not cheese like cheese with filler in it, like really, really good homemade burrito. And I asked the teacher, I said, what difference do you see? Do you see a difference? And she said, since I started seeing our kids eating real food breakfast at school, because a lot of schools, kids eat breakfast, lunch, and often school supper too, especially in low-income communities. And she said to me, Nora, I haven't heard one "I'm hungry" in my class.
Interesting.
My kids are feeling nourished, and they're sitting in circle time better.
So
They're
not
focusing.
only no insulin spike, but they're satiated through till lunch.
We're hearing from athletes and coaches that they aren't getting that afternoon crash, and that the parents, they say that their athletes don't come home as hangry. And so we're hearing from, football players that they're feeling more nourished and that they feel like they can perform better on game day. We're hearing from principals that there are fewer behavioral issues. We're hearing from parents how relieved they feel. They don't have to worry about packing lunches and the economic stress of that, the mental load on that, and they can trust that school food is safe and healthy and that their kids have enough to eat at school, and they're feeling happier as parents. Like, we hear that from moms and dads.
In my travels to the world's blue zones, I've seen that the longest lived people don't just have healthy diets. They have a clear sense of purpose. They know why they wake up in the morning. And that's why I appreciate the perspective of Thrivent. They're a financial services company that believes money is a tool, not a goal. Through purpose-based advice, investments, insurance, banking, and generosity programs, Thrivent can help you create a financial plan that reflects your deepest values. It's about more than just a bank account. It's about supporting the people and causes you love. With over 120 years of experience, Thrivent is a Fortune 500 company that actually puts generosity at the heart of what they do. When your finances align with your purpose, you're not just planning for the future, you're living a life that means more. Learn more at Thrivent.com. So let's take a lunch now. So let's take a typical school lunch, and then tell us what that looks like, and then tell us what the Eat Real upgrade looks like.
Yes. Taco stick in a bag.
What's a taco stick?
A taco stick is like maybe some cheese like cheese in it, some beans, a tortilla that has a lot of preservatives in it, and then it's in this like hot plastic bag. So then it's heated plastic, which is not good. And we're learning more and more about that and the dangers of that, and how, people have credit cards worth of plastic in their brain. So
wonder if I can pay my bills.
Yeah. So what does that do for bioaccumulation in our kids when they're getting that much microplastic and heated plastic? Not good. So from the food quality to then the actual wrapping of the food, that's hard. There are standards. So there are vegetables. There's a piece of cut fruit or fruit that's available. So it's not that it's all right. But sometimes then, we're even seeing schools, they'll have an apple. Well, for a kid with little like braces, or my daughter just lost her 2 front teeth, it's hard to eat an apple. So a lot of times our schools are even just making that apple 1 organic, 2 local, and then 3 slicing it so that kids can actually have time to eat it. And that's where then you do these swaps where you go from a taco stick to a local tortilla made by a local vendor, or maybe you're making it even from scratch, like probably getting it from a good local vendor that has a clean label option, local cheese purveyor. You're getting amazing beans locally. You're maybe adding egg in there from a local farm. And so that's where it's how do you actually just help make it still a breakfast burrito or a lunch burrito, but it's then instead of a taco stick, it's a lunch quesadilla with delicious local ingredients that's hot and fresh and served on a tray. And then there's a salad bar, not just a vegetable. And there's delicious local fruit that's cut and that's prepared thoughtfully, that's not just put on the tray, that the kids actually, instead of it just being, plopped on the lunch tray, but actually then the kids have the options, and we have them go from one option to 3 options, and then they can pick and choose, okay, I want these vegetables, I want that quesadilla, I don't want that taco stick, I want this fruit. And so then they get this autonomy and choice and all these fresh choices of how do they have a lunch that they're going to eat and enjoy. And then they also waste less of it, throw it. Like they're not just being served something plopped on the tray, that they're actually picking and selecting good local options.
So let's talk about the Eat Real process. I think every mom out there with the kid in public school would love to see his or her child eat better.
Yeah.
But there's several hurdles here. First of all, you need the money. You need the funding to buy this higher quality food.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, you need the training from the school cook who before just knew how to warm things up. And then number 3, you need to source. You need to find the tortilla maker, and you need to find the real bean maker and the real cheese. So when a school signs up for Eat Real, walk me through the process for taking their crappy taco bag lunch to an Eat Real with, real food.
Yeah. It doesn't happen overnight. It does take hard work.
Yeah, you were
does
saying
take
it's
support. It does take
2 years,
yeah,
right?
2 years.
But that's okay.
And so we have science-based standards, and we actually assess the school lunch menu. We look at all their menus, all their sourcing, and we partner with the food service director and their team. We bring in our registered dietitians, nutritionists, and our standards that were built by the top doctors in the world, leveraging the best science. And we assess them. We give them this report after we've collected. They're looking at their sourcing and their menus, and the report says, here's where you're rocking it, because they are there. We have to find those bright spots, and we always lead with positivity. And then we say, okay, and then here are the opportunities. If you want to get Eat Real Green, here are some major changes that you need to make. And then we help them make swaps. So swapping out that flavored yogurt for local yogurt with cut fruit. And it's like a parfait that is so popular with the students. And so we help them make those swaps. We connect them with other nonprofits. We know that we can't do it all, and that there are incredible nonprofits that are working, like in Georgia, for example, Common Market is doing tons of farm to school. And so our schools work a lot with Common Market, which is another nonprofit that helps with local regional sourcing and organic sourcing, which is really cool. So we're like, we always help them map what does their ecosystem look like, and then what resources and support do they need. So we give them the data, we give them the support, we try to make it fun to change the world because we know it's a hard job, and we gamify it with our levels. And if you want to achieve Eat Real Green, we have different levels: green, silver, gold, platinum. No one's gotten platinum yet. There's a little good competition around the country who can get platinum first. And then we have one gold district. So it's really about, having them gamify, and there's this incredible effort to get higher and higher in our standards. And then we help them make changes, advocate for more funding, get more, try to find more grants, get more grants. We're trying to launch a grant program to get them more resources right off the bat. And then we reassess them. So we get a really strong before and after, and that process can take 24 months, 23 months. Some can go a little bit faster, but we have dozens of school districts around the country going through this process, raising the bar, trying to understand what the state of their school food and create a food action plan to do transformation.
Percentage-wise, how much more does it cost for a school that's currently serving the taco bag to one who's going to serve a real burrito, a healthy burrito? How is that? Is that within financial reach of most public schools?
So we think it is possible. It does take more investment, and it will take
change. Is it twice as much, or 20% more? Or?
Yeah. So what's interesting is we're nerds. We're like, I have a nerd hat from my friend. We're big nerds on how do we figure out what are the numbers and what exactly is needed and how. So what's interesting is that some of the changes don't have to cost more. Like sometimes you can go to a local Apple. For example, our partners in Michigan went to a local Apple and they started slicing it, and they actually saved money because it was less food waste. Kids just took what they wanted, and they could buy fewer apples, but higher quality local, and their Apple budget actually went a little bit down, but then it went more local. So there are certain changes that schools can make, and they don't have to serve, it's about, maybe they're not 100% of the way. It's how do we inch them towards change and get their menu started on a journey. And so that's interesting that some swaps don't have to cost more, or asking their vendors to swap out some of the ingredients that are on our harmful list of ingredients, or that now are starting to change in policy and not are going to be prohibited in the future. And so they can work with their suppliers, and those changes don't have to cost more. So I don't have a firm number for you on how much it typically costs. Some things do cost more, higher quality proteins, more organic. Those things do cost more. But if they serve in bulk, if they go to more scratch cooking, then they can get some savings actually. And so we have some cool case studies around that. What's super interesting and what we're nerding out on, which I don't have all the data yet, but what we're nerding out on is that as they actually invest in higher quality ingredients, they're able to increase the number of kids eating, which is called participation. So they pay for higher quality, local, real food ingredients. Then they tell the parents it's better and the kids like it better. More kids are eating at school. They have more customers. Then they're able to increase the profitability of the school food program and then get that other chef, get that kitchen infrastructure, get the combi oven.
I didn't know that schools were profit center.
They're profit centers. And
Wow.
which is something we need to innovate anyways. Like we just know buses are important. We should know that school food is important for kids to be able to learn and grow. So we should redo that system. But yes, they are tasked with being profit centers. So how do we help make it the best restaurant and have the customers love it? So if schools can go to 30% of their kids eating school lunch to 60% of their kids eating school lunch, they can actually then offset some of those investments. But in general, we really need to raise the reimbursement rate. Schools are reimbursed for their school meals, and that's one of the big policy shifts that we're asking for. And then we also do need to invest in school infrastructure and training funds. We did a quick analysis, and it was like $35 to $50 billion needed in school infrastructure rebuild in America. So we're working on doing more research on that and crunching the numbers on that. But that's like a couple times we need to make that investment versus the trillions of dollars a year. So that's why we say we need to spend a few billion on higher reimbursement rates and more kitchen infrastructure and training for our schools and more farm to school grants. Spend a few billion, spend billions, save trillions annually. And so that's where it's like, yes, it can cost more, but it's a good investment. Worth it.
Yes.
Our kids are worth the investment.
So I'm going to say something disruptive here. So in traveling to these blue zones and seeing what the longest lived people eat, they eat peasant food. A dinner there might be a minestrone, which is mostly beans and canned tomatoes. It's not expensive. Or beans and rice, Hoppin' John, or pasta and fagioli. Whenever you have a bean and a grain, you have a whole protein. And they cost 50 cents a serving. Is there a universe where school lunches would start cooking these very simple peasant foods for kids? Would kids revolt if all of a sudden their lunch was a minestrone, which is essentially a vegetable soup with lots of beans and some barley in it or something?
I think there are ways to make affordable meals delicious and enticing to kids. Like parents do it all the time. And we're seeing some like kind of classic Americana recipes just done better or with fewer ingredients. So I think that there's a cost-effective way that we can do that. I think we have to make it delicious though, and it has to be cool. Like our school food heroes, our school food directors are on TikTok and Instagram seeing what culinary trends are happening and what the kids are loving. And then they're trying to infuse those flavors. And so there's a way to make it culinary forward and add in the Korean barbecue tacos and add in the kimchi tacos. A salad bar that I was just visiting in Coopville up in Washington had kimchi on the salad bar. And like there are ways that you can add in cool flavors, trending culinary foods, and make it delicious and enticing to kids, but also have it be affordable for the schools.
Ballpark, what does the average school lunch cost?
About $4.50, but then you're looking at less than $1.80 typically for actual food costs. So $1.80, that's, a Happy Meal is $4.80. So it's far less than a Happy Meal, and the food costs are so low. And then with rising inflation, et cetera, we really need to increase that reimbursement rate.
Think of one of your Eat Real certified schools. What did it look like before, and what did it look like after?
Yeah, so one great example is Morgan Hill Unified. Michael Jochner, the food service director there, he actually wheeled a wagon into the school board, and he said, I removed with Eat Real 34 pounds of sugar per student.
That's amazing.
Per year. We had to stack it on the table, and it was taller than my 3-year-old at the time. So incredible. So he went from that flavored yogurt to more of that yogurt parfait. He was swapping out, lowering sugary item frequency. It's about to, right? They still can have certain treats, but lowering the frequency of different things. He went from, I think it was 5 local farms to over 11. And now he's even pre-contracting his Marzano tomatoes for his pizza from a farmer. So now that he's buying a lot of that farmer's crop locally from down the road, he has regionalized his food system in the last 2 years. He's buying local. He also has 2 greenhouses where he's growing 8,000 heads of lettuce in his greenhouses.
What was Eat Real's role in what he did?
He said that we gave him the blueprint in order to make change. And so he said that we came in and he felt like we threw his program against the wall and we analyzed it, and then we helped him create that kind of strategic plan. So he calls us like the Michelin star of school food, where we're coming in and giving him a score and like the test, and then he gets a score and then tries to improve it. And so we're really an extension of his team. So he felt like we came in and gave him the data and the analysis and then helped him create a strategic food plan. A school food blueprint.
And of this data that you gather, what data would surprise listeners?
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to remember the dozens of harmful ingredients that we found. It was dozens. I don't remember the exact number just in his school food that just don't need to be in there. That one, once he got creative and worked with his vendors and his suppliers, it was simple swaps. And we're seeing like in a pepperoni, getting out some of the preservatives in there, just like making shifts like that of hidden ingredients throughout the food. That was one of the places that he started, for example. We're seeing, a lot of people start there. He reduced food waste in a massive way because he went to more bulk sourcing. So instead of serving cartons of milk, he serves organic local milk in bulk. And he actually saved money doing that. So that's super interesting. So that was one of the changes that he made and reduced food waste. He added some really cool, trendy items. He has a cauliflower tikka masala of my dreams. It's so good. He has a Freight Farm lettuce that look like something out of Sweet Green. One of the football players actually came up and they were sold out. All that was left was local cucumbers and tomatoes from his greenhouse, but then Freight Farm grown, like container ship lettuce grown on site at the school. And it was all that was left. And this football player came up and he's like, I don't want a salad. I'm not a salad guy. And he said, just try it. Michael told him, like, just try it. And he went and he tried it. And then he crushed it at his game that night. And the next day he came back and he's like, can I get another one of those? I'm a salad guy. So cool. So he's like changing the healthy habits of their athletes, of the students. And so I have a lot of school lunch, and I've had his school lunch a bunch, and it is every time different, every time delicious. And I get to go have school lunch in Texas next week, Michigan after that, Washington State after that. We're launching in Alabama, in Oklahoma. We're almost in 10% of the population. They're incredible food leaders in Oklahoma. We're launching in Wisconsin. We're launching throughout the country, and we're seeing these major shifts happen fast. I had, the best hummus of my life in Georgia. I had fresh raspberries in Washington. It's just like, it is so delicious. The best food I've had in my life has been at school.
Well, there's a shocker. But I think these stories are really the superstars.
Yeah.
What can an average school realistically do in 24 months? One of your client schools that go through the 2-year process and they go from nothing to being certified, what sort of a realistic improvement you might see?
We see serious change across our standards when they get started. And so you see them going from those packaged items to more scratch-cooked items. You see them going from a couple local farms to adding in multiple local farms. You see them cutting sugar, at least getting started with cutting sugar. One of our school districts, maybe they removed 10 pounds of sugar per student per year, but then they started. So it's like, it's a journey, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it takes community supporting it. It takes these food service directors staying at it. And so you do see really strong before and afters quickly. And then it also, in certain regions where maybe the farm to school infrastructure isn't set up, it can take longer. Or when they have staffing challenges, it's a hard, complicated business. So it can take longer for sure. And it's hard work. It's not like it happens overnight. I don't want people to think like, oh, magically you come in, Real comes in and everything's perfect. Like, no, it is a journey, but when a school joins our program, it means that they're dedicated to raising the bar, and they really cherish their kids and their community, and they're working hard to make changes, and they're going to keep at it.
We work in entire communities with blue zones, and the problems seem so intractable, and people just throw up their arms. But the cost of doing nothing is always more expensive than the cost of trying and making that effort. And I think you're right. Just the very act of picking up the phone, calling Eat Real, and bringing them in and starting to look at it, you've taken the first step on a journey that could be transformative, not only for your food service, but for literally hundreds of kids that you serve for a lifetime, which is important. So I know you're in Texas and California and a few other states, but if you're a mom or a dad listening right now, what's the low-hanging fruit?
Yeah, so every school district typically has a nutrition director or a food service director, and we think of them as the hero in the story. And so the first thing that they can do is figure out who is my nutrition director and my food service director. And we have eatreal.org/parents, where if they figure out who that person is, they can go on to that website, eatreal.org/parents, and then email their director. So first, find out who it is. 2, reach out. And then 3, really, really important, and the first thing in that email is a thank you. Because these people work really, really hard.
Yeah.
And they're very dedicated. It's one of the hardest jobs in our country. They have big teams. And just say thank you because they work really hard already. And then offer support. And that's where, say, maybe they need them to come in and volunteer. Or maybe can I introduce you to Eat Real? And then we offer the support and help. But I think it's come in with positivity and gratitude is really, really important, and start to build a positive relationship with them and offer support. I think that will help stir up faster momentum and change. And we've seen it happen. Like in Capistrano here, Lynn Choi called me, and she's a mom, and she was driving to her kid's school, her son's school, and she was driving him school lunch that she had made. She said, Nora, I really want to make our school food better. And I said, use this email, reach out to Kristen, who's our food service director. She found Kristen, and she said, hey, I heard about this awesome nonprofit. I really want to, connect you. Is that okay? Thank you for what you do. And Kristen joined our program in 12 hours. And now she's joined our program the last couple of years. She has the prettiest map I've ever seen of local organic farmers. And she's gone, she's regionalized the school food, and she's buying from all these local farms. And that mom started to make change within 12 hours just by connecting us, offering support. And Kristen is a huge hero in the school food movement in California and nationally. And Kristen's unstoppable. So it's really exciting how a mom can help build the movement, and then how they can stand behind these food service directors and then give them wings.
And let's just say you contacted the food service director, you said thank you, you've offered your help to volunteer. But what are some of the low-hanging fruit that the average school cafeteria can do within the reach of most schools?
Yeah.
What's some easy things to do to kind of immediately improve the food they serve?
Sugar,
let's just say that...
Yeah, sugar's everywhere, so sugar's a big one.
Switch out sugar.
Switch out sugar, do sugar swaps. So just asking... in San Luis Coastal, Erin Primer, who's a legend, she just worked with our muffin supplier and just had them reduce the amount of sugar in the muffin and then add in local fruit.
That's brilliant.
And so those are like simple things where it's just like, work with the current supplier and the current structure and have them reduce sugar, reduce preservatives, like get out some of the harmful ingredients is pretty simple. And then it's, buying more locally, having them think about local farmers markets and who are those farmers supplying and could they sell into the schools. So connecting them with local farmers, or even getting one taste test into the schools and helping the kids learn about it, and getting one micro purchase, it's called, of a local item. So less sugar, fewer harmful ingredients, getting started, some muscle memory. And we were working in rural Arkansas and Tennessee, and they just started to buy they did a taste test and micro purchase of local melons, for example. So just getting started. They also have incredible okra on the menu there. Like they're really starting to buy more locally, which is really cool. So less sugar, fewer harmful ingredients, working with current suppliers to clean up the labels and get toxic ingredients out, and then going more local. Those are some big changes that you can make pretty quickly.
And that's a lot. And I think to the point and the huge value of Eat Real is doing that audit first and then knowing what the next step is. So I gathered a few statistics here. CDC says that nearly 1 in 5 young people ages 6 to 19 are living with obesity, affected by obesity. U.S. schools serve Over 1 billion meals a year.
Mhm.
That's a lot of opportunity. But connecting the dot
It's
here.
now upwards of 7 billion meals a year. It's wild.
7 billion?
7 billion.
Okay.
7B.
I
It's
only
wild. It's
I only
wild.
missed 6 billion. But the obesity, the childhood
Yeah.
obesity problem in our country, how much of it is the fault of school lunches?
Yeah. When higher standards came in back in 2010, Harvard did a study and found that with higher standards, and they didn't even touch sugar at that point, when you improve the standards,
Higher standards being what?
school food standards, the USDA's school food standards, they started to improve them.
What does that mean?
They added more whole grain, more fruits and veg. They started to innovate them. There wasn't any regulation on sugar yet, but even just those, when you make standards improvement at a national level or at a state level, that there was a Harvard study on that change, and it found that for kids living in poverty, it reduced obesity 47%.
Wow.
So higher standards have been proven to work, and they were not even that high at that point. So higher standards we know work. And we are starting to do more and more research on how does changing school food and moving it towards more real food, how does that decrease obesity, improve mental health? Like we actually, really excitingly, we just received our first multi-year grant.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The Doman Company Foundation came in and they have a passion to eradicate diet-related disease, which we also want to stop disease before it starts. So it felt like a match made in real food heaven. And so they came in with this incredible gift, and we just announced it, and they're helping us launch in a lot of states from Florida to Texas and really show that this works throughout the whole country and that it's feasible, and that reach that tipping point of 10% of the school food, the kids that depend on school food, reach 3 million kids in 30 states in 3 years. And thanks to their support, now we are also doing more research. So we want to study like the impact of not only on obesity, but looking at mental health of kids, on ADHD, on behavior, on sports performance. We are really excited. Like I said, we're total nerds at Eat Real. Like, how do we actually start to measure and share more about the power of real food at school for kids? We're hearing it. We're seeing it. We have the data across the country to show that it's possible fast to change measurably the school food. But then how do we research more and more the impact of the school food change on kids' health, and how can we then invest as a country, invest billions of dollars to save trillions of dollars of healthcare? So
I have a related story. So I spent the last 3 years writing a book on the areas where people enjoy the highest health spans, about 12 more years in the United States. And the place we found in Southeast Asia, I met the head of that country's entire health system. And 4% of people in this country suffer from obesity. In the United States, about 43%. I said, of all the things that you do, what worked at producing a population with 1/10 the obesity of the United States? And she kind of shuffled her paper a little bit. I think she was trying to be diplomatic, and she didn't want to exactly. And finally, she said, "Well, we believe it's really important to not only teach our children nutrition early, but feed them good nutrition early." So I went to a Japanese school to watch their school lunch. First of all, they were helping to do a little bit of prep. They went up, they got their own plates, they sat down. They took out their little chopsticks. On their plate was a healthy protein, sometimes tofu, but sometimes meat, sometimes fish, but not much, a little bit, but it was real. Some rice, some pickles, some vegetables, and then kind of a barley tea, but no dairy, no chocolate milk. There was no chicken nuggets, no dessert, and nothing that would spike their sugar. That's what their taste buds were trained on from age 4 on.
Yeah, and the majority of their calories, I'm sure.
Yeah, but they were all good calories. And you could see very clearly how that explains a good chunk of the healthy population, because you know what? They grow up with little or no taste for fast food. They don't like fried chicken. They don't like a burger and fries because that napalms their taste buds. They're used to subtle flavors. So when you napalm kids' taste buds at age 5 with chicken nuggets and pizzas and taco bags, it's very hard to wean them off of it at an older age. So what are the big hurdles that keep every school from upgrading their food system?
I know you speak a lot about how it's an environmental, and it's our built environment of what's preventing it. And the reality is that this is systemic. This is a systemic issue that's been designed to be this way. It's not a myth that big tobacco bought up big food companies and then rolled out their big tobacco playbook to addict kids to ultra processed food. It's like people are starting to realize that about how our system is broken and how it's designed to get kids hooked on ultra processed foods, and it's highly profitable. So what we're up against at Eat Real, I mean, is our food system, but our food system in that is controlled by big food, big ag, and big pharma's at play too, and big tobacco has historically been at play. So we're up against serious entrenched
economic forces,
interest and business that is seeing that Americans want something differently. They're seeing consumer trends start to change. They're seeing people voting with their dollars for better products. They're seeing that I'm a millennial, colon cancer is up, breast cancer is up. We're seeing our friends get sicker. We're seeing our friends die early. We're seeing moms of kids pass away, and ask where mom is. Like, we don't want our friends and our family to get sick. And so I think these companies are seeing that they are responsible and that they do need to innovate and that they can offer better products in other countries, and we want them here too. And so I think that parents need to know that we are up against a lot. And so we need them to keep voting with their dollars, to keep advocating, to keep voting for people who really make change and that care about our kids and our health and our food system.
And I think what you're doing is so important because you're shifting the demand away from the junkier food and onto healthier food. And I know we like to blame big food, but we had Marianne Nessel on this podcast, and she points out very astutely that the big food companies, they're just like tire companies or computer companies. The only way the CEO of these big companies keep their job is by maximizing shareholder value. That goes back to Jack Welch of GE. And I'm actually good friends with the former executive vice president of General Mills. He's a very good guy. He tried to roll in healthy foods, try to develop more healthy products, and they didn't have the profit margin. And the CEO said, you got to quit doing those. Not because the CEO is a bad guy, but because if he doesn't produce the same profit margins as Campbell does or Kellogg, he's going to lose his job. So it all really goes back to the Farm Bill. We started taught with the Farm Bill, which produces corn, wheat, rice, and soy, about 4,500 calories per person per year, which is about twice what we need. So there's all these really cheap commodity foods. And what does American enterprise do? It innovates to take those really cheap inputs. Yeah. They make it taste insatiably delicious. They add a few $1 billion of marketing, and pretty soon we're overeating. And capitalism is doing what capitalism is supposed to do. It's really not the food company's job to make us healthy. It's our government's job to make us healthy. And, I always stop a step short of blaming them, but they can be part of the solution. And, I'm not funded by big food or, I have no particular love for them, but I also kind of understand the market forces at work that compel them to do what they're doing. And I love your approach. You go to the food service director and the first thing you say is thank you. Entering this important work you do with gratitude, I think is such a powerful wedge to get in. And it's just great.
I believe that real change is possible so fast because I see these food service directors, these heroes around our country who care so deeply about their students. And I am so thankful for each of them. And they actually call themselves Eat Realies when they join the program.
Eat Really.
So we have this it's my favorite. We have group calls. We not only work with one-on-one, but we have them all get together on Zoom calls and trade recipes and talk about which combi ovens they're buying and talk about what recipes are trending with the kids and what vendors are using for what and where can they get a clean label this or who innovated on this. But they're so much fun and they're incredible heroes and they're swimming upstream. They're trying to change a huge system, but they're doing it creatively. They're making it fun. They're getting thank you letters from their kids at school. They have them up on their walls in their offices, and they're showing that it can happen fast and that real change is on the menu and that our cafeteria can be one of the best classrooms. And I am so thankful for each of them. I'm thankful for the donors like Dome & Company that are supporting us and the donors that are making a bet on our small but mighty nonprofit. And I'm thankful for our board and for the parents that are getting involved. And it's parents that are your listeners that can get their state signed up. It's the difference of their state joining our program or not. It's the difference of momentum at the district level happening. Like I see that parents can make change fast and that I know parents care deeply about this.
I think, Nora, what you do is incredibly important, probably more important than people realize. If you're a mom and you think your school could use an upgrade when it comes to food service, I encourage them to get a hold of Eat Real. And remind us what states you're in and how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so we're in 21 states. We just launched in Texas.
Okay, almost half.
Yeah, almost half. So we're 50-50 chance that we're in your starting in your state, and we need your help. So they can go to eatreal.org. They can subscribe to our newsletter. We're Eat Real certified on Instagram. They can find me on LinkedIn, Nora LaTore. They can join the conversation with us. They can become supporters, become donors. They can reach out to their school with eatreal.org/parents. And I'll just underscore you talking about health span and speaking to the urgency of this work. I got involved with Eat Real. I learned what Dr. Robert Lustig was dreaming up with the nonprofit and Dr. Jordan Schlane, who's the other co-founder, two of the top doctors in the world. They saw how sick kids were getting back in 2012, and they said, it's the food. It's taking away healthy years. It's taking away lifespan. And life expectancy, I don't think people realize, actually peaked in America in 2014. Life expectancy is going down. So when I learned what they were up to with Eat Real, I felt like this is like the cause of our lifetime, because when we think about health span or lifespan, sometimes that sounds like far away. But when I realized that our kids are on track to experience fewer sunsets than us for the first time in U.S. history,
Wake up call.
To me, I was like, what? Especially as a Minnesota sunset chaser, I just thought, I want our kids to experience more sunsets, to experience healthier years, to experience happier years. I think in America, we fight for progress, giving our kids a better life than we had, and that's at risk right now. And so I think giving our kids healthy, real food and helping them experience more sunsets, experience more joy, experience more academic success is like the cause of our lifetime. And so it's my joy to do this work. And this is a movement, and we really do need people to get involved. And you've been so generous and passionate about this and supportive. Thank you. And our hope is that people really see themselves in this movement and see that we're making change quickly, but we can do it with their help. And so we hope people will continue to join and build the movement with us.
Eatreal.org, the cause of a lifetime. Thank you, Nora.
Thank you.